Well, a New York City police officer was assassinated today in a cowardly attack, sitting in her car, shot out of nowhere, never saw it coming. Mysotis Famia was shot by a man called Alexander Bonds. He was a two-time convict. He voiced a lot of anti-police sentiment. Bonds subsequently was killed by police. But it's just the latest in a series of horrifying murders driven apparently by hatred of police. Jim Garrity of National Review tweeted a compelling question today. He said this, quote, "If you think the wrestling tweet is likely to inspire anti-media violence, do you think anti-police rhetoric inspired today's NYPD shooting?" Which seems like a fair question. Dan Bongino was a former NYPD officer and also a former Secret Service agent. He joins us tonight. So Dan, I always want to lay blame on the person who pulled the trigger because I believe in free will. But I also think as long as we're talking about fomenting hate and creating an atmosphere where violence is possible, there are a lot of people fomenting violence against the police.
Yeah, well, Tucker, I agree with you. I don't do guilt by association either, but here's the critical distinction. No credible person's going to blame Bernie Sanders for the Alexandria shooting, right? Even though he was a Sanders supporter, that guy clearly had psychopathological issues. But that's not what we're talking about with this anti-police rhetoric. Tucker, these are active calls for violence against police officers. It's not heated political rhetoric. It's not socialism versus capitalism. It's not the benefits of the Laffer curve. This was a chant on YouTube. You can still see it. What do we want dead cops? When do we want them now? This wasn't one or two people. It was loud enough that a person on the 5th floor of a building got it on tape. That's totally different than guilt by association. And I believe that they do share blame because they got what they wanted. They got a dead cop, horrifically so.
What's so remarkable is outside of this channel, I'm not sure anybody said anything about it. I mean, Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, was a presidential candidate 7 months ago, endorsed the group who held the rally where that was chanted, whose members chanted that. I didn't hear any outcry about that. Did you?
You know, Tucker, this is the tough part about this, having a lot of brothers and sisters who are still in law enforcement, the federal side, and a friend of mine I spoke to today who's with the NYPD. This is an NYPD veteran who had 3 kids. These kids are never going to run in that mother's room in the morning again and jump on the bed. Every Christmas, they're going to remember their mother's not there. Every Easter, every holiday, every 4th of July, they're going to have memories of their mother. They're not going to have memories of their mother anyway. They're over. As of yesterday, they are over. And yeah, where was the outcry when it mattered against these cowards in the Democrat Party, not all of them, but these activist far-left liberal clowns who gave these people a platform at both the DNC and Tucker? They were invited to the White House. I know I'm not going to do what they do to us. I'm not even blaming all of Black Lives Matter. But this was a significant portion of engaging in heated, violent rhetoric.
That's right.
And they were given a platform. They would be considered domestic terrorists if they were Republicans. And everybody knows that's true. This is a disgrace that these people weren't called out sooner. And they did it for votes because they knew it was their activist base.
That's exactly right. And when asked, do all lives matter, Hillary Clinton said, in fact, no, just Black Lives Matter. What's so striking and so clear about this is there's no complexity or black and white in this murder. This was a cop who was sitting in her car and a guy, she wasn't involved in an altercation with the guy, it wasn't an undercover drug bust gone wrong. She's just sitting there and a guy comes out of nowhere and murders her. There's no way to read this other than she was killed because she was a cop.
Yeah, let me give you some inside info I got from one of my sources today. He told me that some of it may have been reported, but that the guy who did this was actively casing it beforehand, Tucker, meaning there was an element of premeditation to this. This wasn't some random emotional outburst. He had planned this. He had walked by that THV, that temporary headquarters vehicle, a couple of times before shooting this officer, assassinating her, shooting her right in the head. And, you know, if I can just give a hat tip and a salute to the partner there. I don't know if you noticed, but the radio call by the partner says 1085, 1085, my partner's shot, as he's screaming for help, right? Tucker, 1085 is the officer code for officer needs assistance, non-emergency. What does that tell you? That's how heroic that guy was. You call it 1085 when you need help, but you don't want people rushing to the scene, getting hurt, getting there. His first instinct, even though they were under fire, this cop, the hero cop who survived, was to worry about his fellow cops getting there safely and not getting hurt and not his own life. You still want to tell me about pigs in a blanket and what do we want dead cops, you clowns, in the Black Lives Matters movement? You don't have a tenth of the guts that guy did, calling it 1085. The real code is 1013 in an emergency. And he was thinking about his partners first, not himself, even though he was under fire.
That's an amazing detail. Dan, thanks a lot for that.